day.
Yes, yes.
With 3D printing. So that's where we're
Be-
going.
because I don't know how much you guys are all into science and everything, but they have they've been having new discoveries in science that it's the universe is not actually made up of all atoms. It's more of an electrical current that's all connected. It's like electricity all through. So that's like it all ties into the simulation.
Well, if we can do that and then manipulate the physical realm much
Right.
faster, that's great.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty interesting times happening now, and I'm just glad to be a part of it, working here and seeing what we can really come up with and develop ourselves. I think it can be really, really amazing and powerful.
Absolutely, I think so too.
Yeah, we have we have pretty much all the entities. We all have huge, pretty big networks, great teams. I work with a few other firms and just a lot of. I'll have a few scientists I'm working with, and especially the guys with the data center. That's more my focus. Like, who's developing the grid here? I have a few calls to make, but I heard it was Tolosa. But I'll hear different things about it. I'm gonna find it out though soon.
So I've not been in. I've not lived in Miami for at least 4 years now, so I don't know who's in charge.
Yeah, we'll figure it out and all work together, and because we're all have the same goal and interest and aim.
Absolutely, we all get affected by the outcome, so it's best for us to make it work in our favor as much as possible.
Yes, yes. I can
So,
completely agree.
who are you working with now? I mean, what is it that you do? So I know what your background is, what you do.
Okay, I'm more on the business side. I run accounts and I just more connect the right entities with the right people. But I'm focused with I work with one of the best cybersecurity guys, and he's developing the grid in Atlanta. Or yeah, he's continuing developing their grid, and I wanted to see if he can work with whoever is doing it here. Yeah, so since I've been in Miami, though, I've worked with some great firms, and I met through Silvio, and before that, we've just developed communities. I'm originally from Michigan and Detroit, so we were starting to build that city back up, and I was part of it. We're building up communities 10, 15 years ago, and everywhere I go, I implement that and work on those aspects. Every city. I'm mainly based in Miami. I'm in Orlando and Atlanta and most of the East Coast.
Cool. Yeah, I was living in Orlando, so that's where I hope to return to in a month or so. So yeah, love it.
Yeah, it's a great market. Yeah, we'll talk about it, but that's a great market. I have some maybe some people for you to connect with.
Great. How about that? All right. Yeah.
I started live streaming again, all these global warming images of image locations around the world while we're chatting in the back. I think it'd be cool little YouTube video later. It's our little bit of our rambling with some cool visuals about a warming planet visualization in the background. May or may not be useful for something later, but I thought it would be pretty cool. Alfonso, you're the person I've known the longest on this call.
Oh man. Well, it's
it
good that
feels
we
like
get you
it was
new
just like,
friends.
right? I think that's it feels like it was just yesterday where you and I were the only people that were left in the office back at the right space to meet when the pre-CIC days of the United
Yeah.
Innovation Center.
Yep.
And we were like the first ones there in the morning and the last ones to leave at night. This feels a
Always.
lot like that
Yeah.
sometimes. Always.
Absolutely. Always. And yeah, and I mean
Yeah.
CIC is no longer even there anymore.
No.
So they closed because of the pandemic. So
Yep, I ran them out of business. Look at this. These visuals are so powerful.
oh yeah.
And the stuff you're working on was just so cool, right? It's so nice. It's taken a decade, but we finally been able to find where the overlap is, right? It's like how everything is so connected, beyond the way that I was really able to understand it later. But I just remember seeing you play, like seeing you turn the screens on across like on the walls in the room, and sort
Yeah.
of like take a corner, take like the back wall, or take a corner to yourself with your thing, and just go at it like all day, all night.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and it's that's one of the problems that I saw is that for the most part, most people that came into the area were just not interested or since um they had no interest in using tools in that direction, that sort of uh, intuitiveness. Um, they're used to computers being used, the old-fashioned way. Saying that now, for it was more advanced than it was when I was doing computers, where everything was terminal based. But still, we got a long ways to go before we um, for the user interfaces to be as usable as they can be, as what we see in the movies, with either Minority Report or Iron Man 2 with Tony Stark, walking in his holographic system and you know taking a design, crumpling it up, and throwing it away, that sort of thing. Um, we can be more productive and certainly have better tools if all the data is integrated better. So, but anyways, with what you're doing, what you're showing there with Google Earth, um, being able to navigate through the different scenes, if you wanted to add in information, you should be able to drag and drop stuff there, or circle an area, highlight an area, and find all kinds of information relevant to that. And that's, I think, is stuff that we can make happen with the uh, the app we're talking about doing. So, um, is MiamiVerse the name of our app, or what we may produce as an app, or is that somebody else's
No, it's
project?
it's it's the name of kind of like the first micro, like a hyper local data visualization of human and human and nature, environmental, climate, spatial data interaction, immersive
Okay.
interaction, type pilot, right? So the MiamiVerse, yeah, so that's just a name I gave it to try to distinguish sort of, between across these different things.
Okay.
That's why, what do you have in mind?
Well, because I make sure I put the right name on it when I uh, when I build it, I say MiamiVerse, and um, the one of the things that I said in the chat, you in the text you copy pasted into the Discord server, is having the ability to have different metaverses uh, get registered, so that those in a particular that share a common physical location can then or virtual location can then be rendered with different clients and be seen. That's I think could be useful, so that these people that are snapping pictures of garbage and the pollution, and that have their sensors feeding information into the system, can then be visualized by different clients in relation to what the user needs, or it can be processed by others that need to do their analyses, researchers, commercial interests, etc. Nice.
No, I think your point's a good point, Alfonso, and it'd be really great. One of the challenges that I was told that are being faced, and by the way, I've kept hearing from everybody, private sector, the government, university people, that they would love to see what we're doing, like fruition. They would find it incredibly valuable, even any small part of it, right?
Now, that picture that you have there, that wind channels, those arrows, you remember
Yeah,
in the lobby of CIC of the UN building, they had a map of Miami Beach, the highways, the roads, and they had the little cars going across them.
yeah, yeah. And then they included like a smart screen later too.
Yeah, but that sort of that sort of thing is the stuff that we can easily visualize in our system. We can present that information. Um, if we have traffic information from the city, or from, I don't know, uh, the phones that are using our app, we can visualize, you know, drivers, traffic patterns, heavy usage. Wind and water.
This is something interesting. So you know how we have a lot of like metro rail system and train, just a regular train system. Not that we need any more people to be encouraged to cross the street before the trains get there. um,
Yeah.
which is a whole nother conversation. But this is interesting when maybe we can think about this Midori ratio for Miami, a green index that talks about the percentage of parks and land cover area for the districts.
Oh, yeah.
And we can think about like incorporating this Midori ratio into the green game, and something similar for the blue economy game. But to your point is the game. So the back end, what I envision is really the back end is the database, the middle, the interactive layers, the game, the kind of stuff you've been doing, and then the MiamiVerse just help us like visualize and interact with the data in some way that's immersive, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fairly straightforward. We can do that fairly quickly with OpenStreetMap data. We can take I forgot the name of the format they use, but anyways, we can use their pull the files down, um, go through, define block by block, whatever size tiles we want to use, and determine how much of it is parks and whatnot, and total area that they occupy versus the total area occupied by a neighborhood or um, any region, and display the Midori ratio for it.
Yeah, I think that alongside that, sorry, the hospital sounds in the back. I think that that's a quick way to make an argument for like the basically this is perfect reason to use the chat Mia, right? So you can ask Mia, hey Mia, what are the different neighborhoods or districts according to City of Miami, or districts according to Miami-Dade County, that have the lowest Midori ratios, and then how do we increase those, or where should we plant these things up and down the metro, up and down the rail lines, is one way that these folks are doing it. And then apart from that, different like micro parks or community gardens, like I'm trying to do in my own backyard right now. The more people get data, the more people contribute data or validate what's happening, or the heat. Maybe everybody can adopt a sensor, and then we can figure out a way to like we need an adopter sensor program, and like a heat sensor could be one of those. Could you talk a little bit about the way that where you're at with your data visualization interaction pieces, the stuff you've been building, Alfonso, over the last decade? I can't believe it's already been that long. Sort of where those tools are, where they're at today, and how we might be able to integrate them and use them with this.
Sure. I have, like I said, I started from desktop tooling, and usually Macintosh, Mac OS. So I have a bunch of stuff, and I have uh, a digital notebook app similar to Notion that exists, but it's not a cloud-based system for the Mac. That I had been expanding to where you can store different types of information in there, and was looking to add mapping and geo coordinates and things of that nature. So I have a few things with OpenStreetMap and rendering of OpenStreetMap data. One library which I worked with on Android, I had been using that and adding functionality and performance to that one, and then picked up another library that used OSM data originally for iOS, and I was porting it to the Mac so that I can support um, both mobile platforms and the desktop from a single data source. But anyway, so I have that stuff, and something like that is what I was thinking of using. But if Mapbox and the other tools already exist, and the cost and the speed to integrate them are sufficiently low, then we'll use that. If over time it seems that the cost to use them, like any cloud service, is if it becomes too expensive, we can replace it with these other systems at a much lower cost, so that we can mirror the data that OSM provides and generate the stuff on our own. But um, anyways, so I have that bunch of 3D stuff that I had done on Android. The Mac, I was using one particular library, um, which is based off of a particular gaming engine called Cocos 2D. So I was using Cocos 3D and doing 3D renderings with that and using it with the Leap Motion controller. Um, and after the leaving CIC, I began working on building a, what it's called, a tabletop system like Microsoft Surface tablets or desktops, but they were projection based. So I um, was working on making that, but that's hardware, and it's was a lot more work. And I was working with two other people who, um, after a while, they I don't know, they flaked out. But anyways, we uh, the guy who was working with me and we continued working on it, but um, other things got in the way. Life gets in the way, and um, so we had to put a hold on that, um, because it building your own surface table, it takes a lot of time and effort. And nowadays, you can get a frame that just goes on top of a flat screen TV, and it registers touches uh, pretty well. So I have that now instead, um, for a 55-inch TV. So that's what I use now to have the screen like CNN and weathermen and other people have, that they just draw on the screen, and instead of a large Microsoft or I forgot the name of the other company that makes these large touchscreen systems. Um, I just use a simple frame, and it connects to the USB on a Windows or a Mac, and it acts like a mouse. So it's pretty effective, or a touchpad, I should say, is better. It's touch, it acts like a touchpad, and um, I've dabbled with the Unreal Engine, but um, there's two. It has either C++ or blueprints to do the rendering, and I have not spent as much time trying to build uh, the infrastructure for what I need, the um, HUD UI stuff, and the building up what do they call the procedural generation of the polygons for my stuff. So I've been using JavaScript instead. So I'm using React Native, and now using React 3 Fiber is what it's called, R3F, in order to build 3D models, um, and also D3 for a different app. I'm doing 2D versions of the diagrams, and now I've been doing that from last year, and now I'm integrating that into integrating the 3D stuff into that. So that, as well as all the productivity apps I've been working on. So they're starting to converge where the usability is starting to get there for the 3D stuff in JavaScript and React Native, so that with one single code base, I can make an app for iOS, iPad, um, Android, and the Mac desktop. And if I can get it to build on Windows as well. So like here though, so on the image that you got there, that's satellite data, I believe, with cloud cover. I take it.
I didn't realize I was on mute. Alfonso, no, thanks for that. I'd love to. I'd love your visualizations are always the best. I've always usually been the coolest stuff. I'd love to see if there's any visualization you can do or a workshop you can do at some point. And what does it cost if you want to embed some of these screens into like the street, to be like openly available to the public, or to create like a demo unit, for climate data visualization somehow, or a holographic, screen, or like how can we integrate some of this stuff into what we're trying to get done here? And one of the guys, Raphael, I'd like to connect with you with him. That's been working on the with us this time around. And the climate collabothon is looking at 3D printing art. And each art becomes like an NFT, but it's like a chair, like a chair you can sit into in public, but everybody can modify that chair and make it personal, and then it shows in the metaverse digitally as well. But the chairs are also sensors, so it's like useful information, right? Like that you can display, that you can interact with or display. So there's a lot of functionality that comes into the interactive community art, if you will. Maybe your screens can. I feel like in my mind, your screen is just like some of your stuff would probably plug right into that stuff.
Yeah, because it's once you have the mesh for the for what you want to render, you can either make a 3D print something, do a 3D print of that object, or you can do a visualization that's either 2D or 3D with VR goggles, or even 3D projection TV. You just have the same thing as movie glasses, 3D movie glasses that you wear. And this is the thing that I had been primarily focused on. Going back to that, something I didn't mention, I was using, instead of, because I'm not a fan of the VR goggles, because they're limited to one person per goggle, with a projection with either a 3D TV or a projector. As many people as can have the 3D glasses, they can all watch the object in 3D. It's just you can't turn your head and have everything updated for everybody individually, but you can all, if you're all watching a model or an environment, you can watch it in 3D.
Can we take the data of public records or the proposals from public records and in some way interact with, like, create a knowledge, are you familiar with knowledge graphs?
Let me see. You have a favorite example?
Yeah, so what I'm thinking is we can take let's say some of the information or the proposals, let's say, that's happening in city of Miami to build new projects around my neighborhood, right? All of those proposals are like line items on a docket, on an agenda in a city meeting, in a city agenda meeting. And then those plans are publicly submitted somewhere. How do we take that, render that in 3D and enable me as a resident to be aware of the proposed changes of my neighborhood over the next year or 2 years? It's like a 2-year process for people to approve these things anyway. And how can I visualize what's happening in terms of, like,
Ah,
just real estate proposals or graffiti proposals or other, and then a way for me to interact with our community to just throw in our own sort of like immersive art, sculpture, right, into the mix, so other people from the community could also see, what my, as a local resident, sort of proposal is, to get this done. For example, visualizing the underline extended through, Alap Jackson healthcare system, Alapata neighborhoods, right? Under the extending the underline, but maybe adding other things to propose of, like, how we incorporate, what elements we incorporate into that portion, that section. That's just some of it, but I also want to be able to see what buildings and skyscrapers are being proposed, because some of them I can see already from my house, right, going 20 stories up just 2 blocks away. So I don't know, something that's a little practical like that for a real estate prone place like Miami, I think could be interesting. I don't know.
well, we could take documents that are filed publicly and parse geographic information from them. Sometimes they have plotting information, the coordinates, or plots of land have description of what the boundaries are. We can use that to and visualize them on a map so that others can see what where there are proposed changes to their neighborhoods or to any place that's listed publicly. And that's one way. But the Dade County has a 3D visualization of the um, approved projects that are under construction or approved for construction that you can go to. I don't remember where the graph is. I'll have to see where that is. Oh, here we go. Yeah, the GIS Maps and Apps Gallery for Miami-Dade County.
GIS maps and what?
Maps and Apps Gallery. The second one. That one. So let me see.
This is cool. B305 challenge. Building efficiency. This is cool. I think we can interact with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Community empowerment program. Dashboard. What? Unable to open up that. Interesting. Unable to open up the community empowerment program. That is poetic. Repairable sales. County zoning. Oh, this is cool. Where are the here's a cool one. By the way, we got admitted into the Shrimp Society, sort of like made in the 305.
Directory.
I should say the Shrimp Society together with Miami Tech did this application for local startups that want to build things over the summer.
Mm.
And yeah, we were accepted today.
Mm. Is that like a Google Summer of Code type thing? Where they pay for people to work on open source apps?
Let me see. No, I don't think it's open source necessarily. It's
Right. Well, yeah, but it's something similar, not necessarily. Well, the Shrimp Society is doing one more for, is I guess a form of investment or venture funding, but
exactly.
same thing.
Exactly. And so we're one of the startups that got selected, or like our community-wide startup is one of the got selected, so we can try to set this up so we become venture funded. And I talked to
Oh, is that
that are interested in backing what we're doing too, like at least the climate hub, the climate data visualization parts of it.
Oh, was that Venture Miami
Yeah,
or different? Okay.
Venture Miami. Let's see if maybe we can do Tech Tuesdays powered by Venture Miami. That's cool. Startup learnings. That's cool. Yeah, it's not coming up here. Let me see. Yeah, 10 minutes. ¿Quieren hacer alguna pregunta de tu admisión para el hospital? ¿Quiere hacer unas preguntas de admisión? Maybe I'll actually, maybe I'll try to take this question. I'll leave the line open and I'll just take this now.
All right, dude.
Hey, Alfonso, you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I know you have a lot of experience with development and software development things. So I just wanted, I guess, I heard, I was just listening a lot at the start of the conversation with Paul, and also the conversation about how, it's kind of hard getting like the data from the IoT sensors to be displayed like in an AR environment. And or show they and they are application in real-time manner, right? So there's technically is already possible to get this up and running. And I know a way to do it if that's like kind of the wall. I just want to discuss, we could be technical about this of how to do it, and I could, because the details is the devil's in the details, right? Of like getting proper sensors and then having the proper models to have this, and how many sensors do you want to have, proper planning or architecture of this, from going to sensors to having this in a game environment per se. And like I mentioned, like I think the first step is just like would be to like install IoT sensors to collect real-time data about like different environmental variables. And then like the second step is like create a BMI model of like, let's say if we're gonna do it with Miami-Dade County, right? Like we could have data about like different buildings, or maybe we could identify locations, right? It could be maybe with Department of Transportation, we kind of spoke about potentially putting sensors in the bus stops because there's so many around. If we get the permission for that, just to have like, I guess, like temperature sensors or something to get started. And then those sensors, basically the location of the markers and the sensors in the model will correspond to the real-time, real world placement, right? And then the BMI model, basically together with the location and information of the markers and the sensors, are transferred to a game environment. So that's where kind of like we could use Unity. There's a way to actually do that. And then the third step is have the sensor readings are transferred by an IoT controller to the BMI server and are stored in the BMI database. And the fourth step be having like an effective connection established for allowing like a seamless flow of sensor data to game environment, to a game engine environment. So I think the technology is there already. I guess it's just like, hey, first I think the way to go is maybe my brainstorming or my way of thinking would be like, hey, like we could buy a couple, like if we had some money to buy a couple hundred sensors, maybe like place them across maybe these bus stops, to show like some prototype or like maybe some temperature data, keeping track of cross, and then we could show like a pilot of like, hey, look, we could visualize this in a AR environment. So I think that's maybe, that's my ideas, what I think it's possible. Like from a technical perspective, it's possible. It's just like breaking it down and actually doing it step by step. Um, it's what matters, right? Like from having like the sensors in place, like collecting the data, integrating the sensors reading with the BMI. Uh, so, and then connect sensor readings to a game environment, create the AR content in game engine, um, the transfer the BMI data to the game engine. So that's kind of some things I do see happening. It's just, I guess the question is like, where will the funding for the sensors come from? Kind of.
Yeah, well, there are already IoT sensors out there. What we need to demonstrate is we can try to identify people that have these organized. We also want to have um, citizen journalism so that we have homeowners and uh, interested business partners set up sensors that feed information to us or that are open that we can access. We just need to know where they are. So the less that we can have a single entity pull out of pocket to do their own funding, the easier it will be for us. But also, I think it's important to demonstrate that we can do it instead of um, having someone instead of having to convince someone up front to invest in the sensors and then the development time and the technology and everything that it will take. Uh, that may be too much for them to swallow at once. So I think it would be easier to build up a visualization AR system or uh, game system that does the rendering and mapping like Pokemon Go and simulate the IoT devices, the sensors out there, so that we can populate the city with a bunch of simulated devices that are generating this data, and we demonstrate how we're able to make a system that works. Now, all they need to do is pay for those sensors, and we're good to go. I think that way it would be easier for someone, whether it's government or private funding, to accept that we're able to do it because we show it already working or a working system.
So I come across this like I see it as a like kind of chicken or the egg problem, and
Mhm.
and you mentioned like the the AR visualization gaming aspect, and I think that's like the easier part because if once you have all the sensors in display and you're gathering this data, right, and you set up the system, the rest is just handling that data and displaying it in AR. Um,
Right.
so
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 if we demonstrate but the thing is to demonstrate that not only can we do it, but that we have done it. Once we do that, then people are more willing to invest in the hardware because we've already visual. All they have to do is now connect into our system, get plugged into our system, and uh, and the information becomes available that it's usable by interested parties. You're right. It is like a chicken and egg type problem, and the because the easier part is the mapping or visualization of this data. If we uh, present visualization of simulated data, test data, if you will, then they're more willing to fork over the money necessary to wire the city up. You understand what I'm saying? It's just easier that way because it's easier to build the software. Then they're less reluctant to part with money to invest in this project or to invest in the sensors, the IoT necessary to wire up the city.
Okay, so the two things I guess from technical point is one that test data is not live data, so it's kind of I guess the main thing is like showing that the sensors are picking up live data and showing live data. So I wonder how the test data, how would that work? You know, I'm just trying to understand that aspect, but you know, maybe putting, then the question, my second follow up would be like, how big of a pilot per se would have to be to catch, I guess somebody's attention to be like, well, we'll invest in this, and I guess it's like, hey, do we just put like 10 sensors in a building and show like, hey, look, we installed this, it has the capability of having like indoor air temperature, light intensity, or and humidity per se that is captured and connected to these IoT sensors, and then is visualized in this AR application in real time manner. So is that good enough? I'm just wondering, like, hey, is that small example good enough that we could get all the sensors across, like the city or in different, public buildings, and you could visualize it in this way? Is that something good? I'm just wondering. I'm just throwing some thoughts.
No, I think it's going to have to be a lot denser. Um, we'll need a denser sensor network. 100 devices per square block, if you will, per city block, for example. Maybe 300, feeding lots of data, and that goes into uh, the database or data collection system. Um, and then the visualization aspect of it is that whatever area you're in is only taking a small number of that information and visualizing it or rendering analysis of that. So there's one system that is absorbing all this information, acquiring and collecting all this information, and another system that does visualization. It's like on the Uber app, uh, the drivers have their apps, and it's feeding information to the network of where they're located and their orientation and how fast they're going, and all of that stuff goes into one uh, system application. That's data acquisition, and then um, there are other apps that run on Uber servers that when a user requests a driver, then it begins figuring out, okay, who are the drivers within this sector or quadrant or the closest to this area that can respond in a timely manner to this user who has his coordinates, his app, the app on his phone, feeding the information as to where he's located, when he needs a ride, and um, how many people are going and what the destination is. And then their system begins trying to um, pick the best driver based on availability and um, locality. So there's going to have to be several different parts to it for it to work well. But the main thing I think is just showing that we have a system, or a great deal of the system that shows that it's feasible. And then when others start seeing the benefits of having this information, then they'll begin to participate. Then they'll be willing to invest their own time and effort to it.
So one of the major advantages, that obviously you mentioned Uber has is that they are using the sensors of the phone, so they could keep track of a lot of things. Just they didn't have to install per se the devices, right? They don't own the phones, but they use the data, the sensors of the phones. Um, and are able to implement that with their app. So in this essence, I'm just thinking of like, hey, you mentioned, 100, IoT devices per se, whatever it is, whether it's like, let's say the average of the cost of a device is like $50, right? Times 100, that's already like $5,000, right? Just to have a simple pilot, just buying the devices. We're not even speaking about any software development part or any platform. So I'm just trying to work out through a simple pilot or MVP, right? Like, hey, like if someone I'm just trying trying to fix the chicken and the egg problem here, right? Like, hey, you want to visualize this live data, we need to have the sensors uh, across, right?
Right.
Or we need, I don't know, because I believe maybe there's already like, maybe there is I could look through the data sets, maybe there is some type of implementation of light sensors, but obviously if they're part of um I don't know if there's how many sensors, but having access to the live data of those sensors, um obviously from the public uh, view,
Yeah.
in the sense of like there's some privacy or security, I guess, concerns of
We,
having
we,
access directly to that data.
we got, I think we can get special approval for that, Louis, and it's a good set of questions. I know you and I have been thinking about this for a while and trying to, understand what's there so we can then understand what sensors we should be deploying. But I think that the way to overcome this chicken and the egg conundrum, like you mentioned, just it has been years, so it has been a big chicken and the egg. But at this point, I think it's I know FIU has gotten a lot of grants, like that EPA, the air quality EPA grant we applied for. They won. So people like Dr. Tiffany Troxler has a lot of that data. FIU has a lot of that data. City of Coral Gables has some of that data. So we've been working with the GIS. We've been talking and been working more closely with the GIS department at City of Coral Gables, and we've been telling them like kind of what we're doing, and we found some like, we actually found like a really listening ear there, and interest, a lot of interest. University of Miami is also very interested in our data visualization piece, but like we heard Alfonso say earlier, there's like these hexagons, these large hexagons for climate data that exist, and it's like a mathematical equation that you need to pull to make that large plot of data fit over Miami-Dade. It requires some calculation. So they're applying for like a $10 million grant they expect to maybe get in June. And they'd be interested in maybe having us form part of their team at that point. But in the meantime and in between time, right, we should think of, you know, exactly how we move this forward, right, on that data visualization piece for the within MiamiVerse. And so within the city of Coral Gables, which is the most advanced smart city right now, has the most data, whatever. They have not a lot of sensors, like Alfonso was mentioning. We need data density, which we expect to do through an adopt a sensor program. And I'll get back to that adopt a sensor idea. But to finish on the city of Coral Gables point, I sent an email to the city of Coral Gables GIS lead, and then the GIS lead is going to ask the chief sustainability officer. The chief sustainability officer asks FIU. There's two people, Tiffany Troxer and Tiffany Fu. No, Jennifer Fu. I think it's Jennifer Fu and Tiffany Troxer. And for the data, and I think they already have that kind of data in there. I think heat, air quality, water quality, and then we'll get it like a test API. And the idea is that we can use from like AR Miami or Unity Engine to pool the data, either do a data pool or do a GraphQL. It's actually one of the things we've been thinking about is how do we do a GraphQL so we don't have to do a data pool on a bunch of data. We can do very specific type of data through GraphQL. At least that's how the thinking is going right now with our conversations. And so the request for that API or that data stream is underway, you know, in terms of what we should be thinking about visualizing. And in that case, we're thinking of like air quality, heat information, and tree canopy. So we can try to show the interrelation between these things and water quality, like water quality, heat, air quality, you know. And then icing, so that was that point with Coral Gables, right? So we are requesting that, and they probably can give us that, and maybe we can, that kind of solves the chicken or the egg situation where we have something we can actually use and pull and leverage, right? The second point is this adopt the sensor, the data density point, to Alfonso's point. And so I know that IC Change is doing a pilot, and they have these like small heat sensors, and they're trying to like give those away to different communities, neighborhood associations or whatever. So Sustained Cities and our like Save Miami Climate Collabothon campaign and can seek to partner with them. In fact, I think we are, you know, I wouldn't say we are official partners, but they are part of this Collabothon. So we could, and they're trying to get these heat sensors out. So we could probably create this sort of like this game, you know, where people get rewarded oceans tokens, tree tokens, whatever, Miami coin, whatever we think. We're just adopting and helping structure some of the data, right? And supporting that data and putting it, and then they can make money from putting it up on the data hub, climate data hub, that we're building out. So I just wanted to round the wagon with you on that, to give it some thought, or catch you up on some of the latest trends and resources that are being made available to us to do this kind of stuff.
Great. Yeah, I think like once you have, you know, I guess the sensors all throughout, you just get like those sensors reading and store them in like a BMI model, and then like you could use like a software application like I guess like Dynamo, like which like it's just a visual programming environment for Revit, and then basically once you have like the locations of the markers, they're like once they're transferred to the game engine from the like BMI model, right? You just connect the sensor readings to the game environment. And you know, I heard you guys mention Real Engine, so you could use that as on like authoring environment, and then basically the readings are just linked to the game environment, like just use like visual scripting feature of like Unreal Engine. And then basically once you have that, like the live stream of the sensors in the game engine, it's just maintained using the developed tool. So you just create the visual environment for it. Basically, in the end, you just have the sensor readings are visualized in the AR environment. That's kind of like the logic or the flow, kind of how I visualize, like once you have access to that data.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that might make sense is if you want to either use the GitHub, and this is maybe some food for thought, but you can either use like the GitHub repository, or we can use like a visualizer app or something, so we can contribute to how we think the architecture should look for the GameVerse component, and how like we pull real-time data for air quality or water quality or heat or whatever we choose, or all of the above. So while you're moving through Miami, you're able to visualize that data.
Yeah, well, I think like I mentioned, it is doable. Like if you have, like you said, you already, you have the people, the people. If we have access to those sensors, then instead of buying those sensors, I'm just like, once we have access to data, we just have to analyze how to get, how to store them in the BMI model, and then program it actually to display it visually. So I guess that will be spoken with the technical team, of like you mentioned Coral Gables. So if it's Coral Gables and if we have access, like, hey, like we will visualize that and different things, like, but it is doable. It's just like, getting it done, and to what of a large scale do we need to prove that this is doable? So I guess that's my 2 cents on this whole thing.
Okay. So I'll keep you posted when we do that, and then we'll probably share. We're probably going to create like a community login for Unreal and for Unity Engine. Paul and Alfonso, respectively, Paul for Unity and Alfonso for Unreal, will be sort of be the principal managers for both of those engines, respectively. And we're just going to sort of experiment to see what works the most and what functions better, what pools, kind of experimenting. There's other suggestions we've had, other thoughts. Thank you so much. Other suggestions and other thoughts that we've had to how we get that done. But at least that's kind of the most straightforward approach. And then I think there's grants. Like I think there's Unity for Good, and Alfonso has identified grants on Unreal Engine, and I've identified grants for the database, and we've identified financing partners for the sensors, and there could be an adopt the sensor program. When we show the MVP, then we can do like an adopt the sensor program as part of our campaign and these love letters to Miami. And maybe each person buys their own sensor, and we say, look, these are a million sensors that we need, just to throw a number, right? And we have, $100. So how do we, and then that's kind of one way maybe we can do it. Each person can buy a sensor depending on how much they have. They can contribute, a sensor that's more or less, you can buy a $1,500 air quality sensor. You can buy a, $150, heat sensor, or a $100 water quality sensor. I don't know, like, there's different things that we might need, and different areas have different priorities. And if we can show a little bit of traction there, then we can probably unlock more funding from like NOAA, NASA, City of Miami, Miami-Dade County, or apply for grants with these partners to get more funding to like fill the gaps, especially in very critical areas. And AI will help us point out which areas those are. The Ask Mia tool feature should enable us ourselves to organize our research and our work and our impact to know exactly where we should be focusing on.
Whatever you think is the fastest route, or the lowest hanging fruit, Obviously from an IT standpoint, it's always best to own the hardware, and the software, so you have full control of everything, um, to the minor details. But definitely for like if you want to be cost effective, just once you have access to that data, we could have like some type of pilot where if we have like direct connection to the sensors, like creating, I guess, the development side of the software to display, you know, the AR visualization part, it will be like that will have to be worked with Paul and also like I mentioned, there's a way to do it. I just found it interested that Paul, being the expert in the AR field, he kind of and he said it was not possible or not capable. So or he said the technology wasn't there. So I would like to maybe further discuss with him, what's the possibility and really understand, once we have real insight to what is the data set and the data we're gonna have, how that will be integrated, just without all the, mentioning all the hype words per se, Web3 or blockchain or these other systems.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. No, you feel free to chat with him. We're also, are you there in the, if you look at the Save Miami Discord, if you go to savemiami.org, you can probably get access to the Discord and ask, pose some questions or host something there with the on the MiamiVerse side. Let me see if we can get it. Discord. Yeah, there we go. This is Discord here.
Yeah,
Or
please join so that you can
share his info,
provide info. Yep.
call directly. You're welcome to give him a call if you need his number. I'll share his number with you. But yeah, no, I definitely encourage it. I mean, these are some of the few leading experts of our community, that understand deep tech, right? From Web3 to Web2 to XR to spatial to from Miami. There's not a lot of people that sort of understand all these different areas of it. Luckily, a large part of the group that showed up to contribute to this project are from the Web3 community. So that gives us a big, at least we all speak the same language, but I would say that 98% of the community we're trying to onboard, probably 90% of the community we're on board probably don't have that skill set. But we have been selected. I don't know if you've been following some of the news. We've been selected for Refi Miami, so we can unlock more funding through the grant. We'll probably be we're on Gitcoin. Our Gitcoin grant is now open. We need to maybe tomorrow or over the next week, sort of promote that Gitcoin grant as much as possible. And then when we do this Fireflies Festival, we might do something at Formula One or a side event of Formula One. Try to onboard those communities in real time when we're there. Literally have everybody open up their phones, scan a QR code, get their wallet, get their Oceans token, claim their soulbound NFT to be part of the game. But go to Gitcoin, right? Get $1, get a Gitcoin, vote for us with $1, assuming that it's not $3 with the gas fees. And with quadratic voting, that should unlock up to 25K worth of funding. And that'll open up again. That'll open up this quarter, then open it up again in the next 3 months, so we can go and maybe apply for the climate round on Gitcoin, right? But at least we would have a bigger community. And with more votes, even if it's just $1, right, we can unlock a lot more than just $1 from each person that contributes. And so on the funding side, I think that that's another more innovative way we're seeking to unlock funding. And now that we've have the support of Refi DAO, you should probably check out the podcast. I think our podcast episode came out for Refi Miami, the visual we're doing for the Save Miami campaign. I haven't heard it yet. I gotta check it out. Anyway, just wanted to share some more thoughts there that might be relevant.
Yeah, that's good to know. I think we already have, or especially in the network, we have some of the top people already, in the space. Uh, Paul is definitely the expert in AR, VR, in especially well known as, but not only in Miami, but in several areas. So, um, I think we have the people, the team. Just I guess we need the 1, 2, 3. Whether it's like, hey, we're gonna get data from the city, or we're gonna get this different data sets, and then we just gotta get that into like the BMI model, and then display it in a visual aspect. Like, here you go. I don't know if you remember that time once I found out the data of the bus stops. Remember that I did that map once I had the
Yeah.
location, the latitude and longitude. I just put it on a Google map, right? So it's the same concept. Like, once I have access to that data, it's just like, hey, I could put it in VR, or I could do that as well. And we could go on from there. So just let me know. I will speak to Paul, and we could, I will see what can be done on his front as well.
What's if you want, I can give you this for the mapping data of the buses. What's the best email for
Just
you?
remember, just be careful, because you're sharing your screen and you're live on YouTube, and you're like sharing LastPass.
Stop share.
Yeah, especially if you have, is YouTube still on or you turn that off?
YouTube is still on.
I think it is the one. Let's go ahead.